Congratulations, you've unlocked All Apologies, a show about apology tours and demanding satisfaction. I'm your host, Trucker Andy, and with me, as always, is your co-host, Joe Sixpack. Joe, what's going on?
How you doing?
Hey, what's up, everyone? Don't forget to go to allapologies.com, allapologiespodcast.com to find links to our Patreon, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook. Please go there, like and subscribe, demand apologies, issue apologies, refuse apologies. And the one thing we're still asking is for you to subscribe to the YouTube channel so we can grow that community. But Andy, we have a extra special episode today.
Yeah, I want to also point out up in the corner there, that's the Hackamania promo code. I'm trying to
back to I
wasn't. We don't have a big enough audience for us to be issued our own promo code, so it's just use promo code NLO if you want to come check me out at Hackamania. But I do want to get to the episode proper because we just spent a lot of time unpacking the show, the movie Brain Smasher, a love story, with our topic of the day, the one and only Andrew Dice Clay. And we couldn't talk about Brain Smasher without our resident movie expert. It's nice Doug from Good Times, Great Movies joining us today. Doug, how are you?
Hey, fellas, I'm happy to be back in such a short amount of time. I feel like I was just here. And I have a question. Is Dr. Steve here today?
Yeah. Hey, welcome to the
You'll
show.
Be shocked to learn.
I did try and get him. He politely declined. It's going to be. He did promise me that he would eventually come on the show, and I was just like, "Nah, I'm good."
Who gives a shit?
And also, we can't talk about the career of Andrew Dice Clay without our All Apologies stand-up comedy expert, the guy whose look I'm stealing. It's Blind Mike Geary from
The All Apologies debut of Blind Mike. Thanks for being here, Mike.
It's about time. I think I literally sent you guys an idea and I wasn't invited on for that episode. I heard Andy promote that he was doing it. I was like, that was my idea. I think it was Brendan Schaub and Brian Callen crying when Dalia got canceled.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God. Okay. We definitely did Dalia. Okay.
So it's about time.
Yeah.
But at that point, I was still building the format and my confidence, Mike. And then now
I was still using the pronouns wrong and the N-word liberally. It would have been embarrassing to have you on at that time.
Then I appreciate it. All right.
This was all for the best.
Okay. Well, we did cover Brain Smasher. That was probably the latter day Dice when he was possibly at his lowest point, worst quality version of Dice, right?
Yeah. We're going to see a little more of that later. Yep.
I want to take it back to when he was the hottest name. He was on the tip of everybody's tongue. But Joe, you kind of put together this.
Yeah, I'm going to quarterback this section of it. So, like you said, so this would have been 1989. Was like the height of Andrew Dice Clay's career, but I find it relevant to at least mention. If you look at IMDb, I think his first credit is around 81. So he's like a 10-year veteran. Probably if his first credit is 81, then he was doing stand-up well before that. I mean, he's like a stand-up comedy veteran at this time. So it would have taken him about 10 years. And that's kind of relevant to the story as we get into it. So what we're talking
ask Mike, though. You mentioned earlier this was a character. Are you aware of work that he was doing prior to the Diceman? That
a lot of it was like the Elvis, like he did a great Elvis impression. Travolta, he did a lot of impressions, and like he would go on stage as I think he used his real name, Andrew Silverstein, and the Diceman was just a character that caught on and got very popular, so he started doing that more and more, and then he kind of became that guy. Like I think there's an element of Dice that was always in the real guy, but it just kind of consumed him. Like he became the character. I said this on the Patreon version too, but like similar to Pee Wee Herman, where it's like a guy that did a ton of characters, one really stuck, and then they just kind of became that guy.
Or maybe like a Bob Goldthwait, who is just, oh, people like it when I talk silly like this, and suddenly Bob Goldthwait's stuck doing this stupid fucking voice for 30 years.
Right.
Yeah, it's very funny that you mentioned that, because maybe I'll set the agenda here. So what we're going to talk about is the MTV banning Dice at the height of his career, basically the 1989 MTV VMA Awards, the Video Music Awards that Dice appeared on. And what I'm going to do is intercut between the recent Joe Rogan interview that he did with him. I don't know, last year, but fairly recently, he interviewed him, and Dice, what on our show, All Apologies, what you don't get to see is kind of like a reflection of a failure maybe by somebody. And very, very rarely, like we get to see maybe Dan Harmon was one where you got to see Louis C.K. very specifically. You get to see like a titan of the industry process like a cancellation or something like that. And so that's what we're going to see here. Is we're going to go over the event that occurred, and then look at Dice now and how he sees it. And then we go into, so we covered Brain Smasher on the Patreon episode. We're going to finish this off. Obviously, it's no apologies or all apologies. So we're going to cover Dice's no apologies special just very briefly at the end. So you kind of see where he was at the pinnacle of his career and kind of where he was on the down spiral. And then you see him now, obviously, as we're going to go through this. So to get into it, we're going to start with the recent Joe Rogan interview. And here Dice talks about his accomplishments, his idols, and his career on Joe Rogan in clip 1.
Let me tell you something. When you're the first guy I'm the first guy to do what I did.
Yes.
I mean, I always looked up to Eddie Murphy. I think he's the absolute greatest, from stand-up to the films he's done. And that's sort of the career I wanted. I figured I would just go from doing, millions of people on the road to just movie stardom, But, I got the backlash.
Yeah, you were the first to get the backlash.
Yeah, but I was the first
banned from MTV.
He's killing it with the glasses game, Joe.
He's wearing Andy's glasses.
He's also wearing. Doug, he's still rocking the Big J fingerless gloves, and that is not. It's not even a faux leather jacket. That's like a canvas sleeveless jacket, studded canvas jacket. It's absurd.
To be fair, the Big J gloves are an homage to Dice. So
sure,
yeah.
So he's still rocking.
Doug mentioned that I think in the Patreon episode, that they'll let you get absorbed into the character, right? So he's still doing it for. Go ahead, Doug.
No, I was just going to say, and I don't want to jump ahead here. I think it's really funny that he does bring up Eddie Murphy. And I totally get what he wanted to be. And we see that with the movies and everything like that. And I think the MTV thing, like, that's just crazy. And it makes me think of, I think it was like Anthony Jeselnik or somebody recently was talking about, like, don't go do comedy in an area where people are there to see something else. He's like, it can only go bad and it can only go wrong. And it's really strange because he probably could have reached that height. He probably could have reached that level. But boy, this MTV thing, like, that threw a wrench in the whole thing.
There's an element, though, that I think is a little unfair, because like the shit that Dice was saying, they talk about how vile he was and everything. And if you want to bring up Eddie Murphy literally has tracks on both his specials that I can't say what they're titled. You know what I mean? Like they did kind of pick and choose who they were offended by. Whereas Eddie Murphy was the biggest movie star in the world, and Dice was deemed too toxic to put on television.
But Mike, I think that's where it kind of diverges, because I don't know if, I know the MTV, do they even have those awards anymore? I have no idea. But when I was a teenager, that was a big fucking deal. I remember it was like the Sunday night before school started. So it always kind of sucked and was great at the same time. And just as a kid, it was like, 10, 11 years old watching this, I was like, this shit is not for me. like this is he should not be here. Like, I love how at the end he throws it to Cher. Like, that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was the funniest part of the whole thing.
Oh yeah,
But
we
just,
have that.
it just feels like he probably should have never done it in the first place. I get the exposure, I totally get it, but boy, it doesn't hit, it doesn't land. I kind of understand.
So I think I mentioned here, but it also that it is live. The VMAs are live.
Mhm.
That's like the biggest
crazy.
problem. But Andy, any thoughts before we keep going here?
Only that when you say Eddie Murphy like that, you can see when he comes out here. Yes, I'm trying to be in Raw, doing like the white guy version of Raw with the gloves and the leather and the profanity. So that connects. And the fact that
great.
MTV was saying, yeah, let's do this live. Let's put Dice out there live is a failure on MTV's part.
Yes. And it kept happening because he got banned from SNL for the same thing.
It gets even more egregious. I don't know if you guys like previewed this or whatever, but like obviously for the audience, they don't know what's coming here yet. But unless you were alive and remember this. But Andy, I'm glad that's what I was going to point out too. His connection or desire to be like Eddie Murphy. Like, I would never put 2 and 2 together with that, but to hear him speak it out loud, I was just like, oh, fucking obviously. Like, that's it's obvious when you hear it. But so let's get into like I said, we're going to jump back and forth between the Rogan interview and the MTV part. Some will go, boom, 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 but some are back and forth. But so here is in 1989, this is the 6th. So this is the first MTV. So these guys were growing. MTV's, VMAs, and Dice were growing at the same time, right? So it was like a 6-year span between Dice's first kind of credit and the first MTV Video Music Awards. So now we are at the 6th MTV Video Music Awards, and they're trying to figure out how to stay cutting edge and relevant. And Dice was the most cutting edge thing going on. Clip 2.
Good evening, ladies, and good evening, gents. I'd like to welcome you to this event. My name is Dice. I'm here to say I was born in Brooklyn, Sheepshead Bay. Come a long way to make you smile. I'm gonna do it different, gonna do it Dice style.
So he wraps the cigarette around his head, It's the classic. I mean, it's almost hack at this point, right? Mike, do you like when you do like Why Are You Laughing? Like certain things, because they're so prolific, become hack, right?
You know, it's weird. I think maybe the first guy to do the like white guy rapping thing was Rodney Dangerfield. Who's a big influence on Dice.
Rapping Rodney.
Yeah. You would not think that
back in like 1947 or something.
He had like one of the first hit rap albums, technically.
Yeah.
Because it was part of his comedy album.
It was
it is like his 5th credit. It is like his 5th credit is like with Rodney. Like even before this, before he got there, like obviously heavy. So this is right after the Diceman cometh, by the way. Like, huge. So everybody, you'll hear like the nursery rhymes are coming and everything like that. But he was like untouchable. Yeah. Peak. You would think that he would know better than to rap. He's like, my name is Joe, and I'm here to say,
so that's what I was saying.
Like, in a shitty way.
Even when Rodney was again, I wasn't alive at the time, so I saw it 40 years later. But it seems hack where you're kind of cringing even then. So I imagine by the time like this is what year did you say? 89?
89.
Okay, so maybe not yet because I'm thinking like NWA wasn't around yet or wasn't as prominent yet and shit like that. So maybe it's not considered, but it does feel like
But
you know,
Public
it
Enemy
feels very
was.
Joe Piscopo.
The words you're looking for are corny as fuck. But
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And that's
Hill
the thing
Gang
that
is still a thing.
I feel like there's such a disconnect then suddenly, and maybe in the Rogan interview he gets into, you know, why he did what he did or something. But I almost, from this opening, it almost feels like he had something completely different, and after that he's like, "Oh fuck, this is failing miserably. I'm just gonna do my act." Like that's it.
Yeah,
Well, you don't know how right you are.
yeah. It is funny you say that. It was just like if he had one thing planned, it was that. And everything that comes after this is a reaction to something, probably. So in clip 3 here, Dice has a motto, and Joe Rogan is being cringe in front of his hero in clip 3.
You know, I always had an expression: nobody fucks with Dice. Dice does the fucking. In the past, the present, the future, and a day. Dice ultimately
In the multiverse.
does the fucking. That's it.
In the multiverse.
So I come for the rehearsal, and my whole job was to hit my mark.
Twice, Joe. You said
And
twice.
ladies and gentlemen,
Jesus.
I remember it. The last Puritan. Share.
Yeah. Joe, Dice didn't laugh the first time, and he wasn't because he didn't hear you. Okay, he didn't think in the multiverse was a funny line.
He's not a big fan of the Marvel movies, I guess. Jesus.
Yeah, but we'll get more into fucking Joe Rogan being cringe with Dice here. But so yeah, Dice does the fucking, and that's what you have to keep in mind. Like, you know what is so funny to me when we go through this is how now actually if I didn't cut it because I almost found it embarrassing. He's recalling it, but he's actually getting it wrong, like the nursery rhymes that he says and things like that. He's kind of misremembering it a little bit, but that doesn't matter. The broad strokes he definitely has right. And Mike, I wanted to ask you, was The Day the Laughter Died, did he do that with Rick Rubin? What is the Rick Rubin connection? Do you remember?
Rick Rubin produced it. It's
okay.
Mark Norman has a very interesting take on Rick Rubin. He's been saying this on a lot of podcasts the last couple of years, where he's like, I don't get what Rick Rubin's talent is. It's because it's evidently looking at a good musician, or in Dice's case, a good comedian, and being like, I'm gonna give you money. and Rick Rubin has just gotten a claim for that. So I will say, I guess what Rick Rubin's talent is in this case is, who the fuck else would hear The Day the Laughter Died and be like, yes, we will pay you for this and distribute it because we think it's going to be a massive album. Like, you hear that, it's just Dice berating an old man that's there with his family in a Christmas sweater. And you're like, what the fuck is this? You didn't even try to make something. I want to say that was 91.
Okay, so on the heels of this.
It's right around this time. I could be, my dates could be off, but it's
okay.
91-ish.
He's banned at that point.
That makes sense because Rick Rubin is involved in this. I feel like the VMAs were like co-produced by Dick Clark and Rick Rubin.
It's possible it was right before. It could have been right before. I don't exactly remember.
Okay, because a lot of the story that he's telling on Rick Rubin is like secondhand that he was told by Rick Rubin. Okay, so that keep that in mind. I had to cut it, and also I would recommend anybody who finds this interesting or whatever, go and watch like kind of the second half of the Joe Rogan episode, because Dice talking about his relationship with Rick Rubin is fascinating, but I didn't include it here. But so in our next clip, this is just the classic stuff. Like, this is Dice just kind of, this is what MTV thought they would get, and they got it.
Well, Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet, eating her curds and whey. One came a Spidey, sat them beside. He said, hey, what's in the bowl, bitch? Oh.
Can I just say real quick, not to interrupt, but I saw Dice.
Jill came down with 250. Oh,
That's it. Whatever. We've all heard it. Go
Those
ahead.
are the ones everyone knows.
Sorry about that.
No, go ahead.
I saw Dice here in Boston just a few years ago. It is amazing. There's nothing else like it in comedy. the idea that an entire room is yelling the punchline with the guy. Like there is something amazing. It was very cool to just be there for that. It is pretty interesting.
Yeah, maybe the only other version that I could think of would be a whole room yelling "Hot Pocket" at Jim Gaffigan.
But it's not even that. It's like they want to hear "Hot Pocket." That's something. This is like being at a concert, which is great. No one else has really been able to do that.
I'll tell you what is similar to that, Mike. If you go to Hackamania and they do, or really where it happens is DabbleCon. And when Stuttering John is looking for something and that he can't find it, or even when there's a live technical issue, like Vinny's fucking it up in the back, whatever is happening, the whole audience going, oh, and listening to the whole room do that is so fucking funny.
I think when Carl comes out, everyone's like, just do it.
Yeah.
Hey, I
but
do
anyway,
wanna,
you're right.
Sorry, I want to throw some dates out here because this is kind of interesting. So what we're watching, the MTV thing, was in September of '89, and The Day the Laughter Died was recorded in December of that same year. So just a couple months later. Yeah.
It was Christmas Eve or the day after Christmas.
It's crazy that they're so close. I would have thought Laughter was before this.
That is
or way after it.
No, that is crazy because he's still at the height, and I won't spoil it. We'll get to it later, but that's wild to find that out. Okay, so going back to Joe Rogan, Dice on seizing this opportunity of performing on MTV.
Polarize it, and I think he's great, but
tough crowds.
You don't come out on the MTV Awards at the Universal Amphitheater and talk about the Hats Sinatra War. I'm looking at my friend going, look at the crowd. No, it's like he's not even in the room. You know, my friend says to me, he goes, well, you could go out there and you could either be a teardrop or you could be a tidal wave.
Right. So Dice knows that this is like a cultural milestone. If nothing else, the man is acutely aware of who he is and where he is at this time. Right. Right guy, right place, right time. Maybe wrong material, as we'll find out coming up here. But
I did want to point out that I think on Rogan a couple of times, maybe it happens in another clip too. Rogan starts aping. He does it.
Yes.
Doing that on purpose, or does he?
No.
Or is he doing it like unconsciously because Dice is there? What he's doing is does it a couple of times.
Yeah, he does. You're right about that. And I don't know if that's what like kind of makes Rogan a good interviewer. Like they call it mirroring, right? Like when you're trying to gain acceptance from people, you mirror them and you act like them. And the only thing is like Dice is immune to that. Like he's heard every fucking Long Island Ginzo douchebag do the fucking same thing. So it's not going to work on him. Like it really is like water off a duck's back. So to hear Joe Rogan doing it is just like very cringy.
If you want to hear all four of us do it, you should subscribe to the Patreon, which is what I'm going to say right
now. So in the next clip here, a legend meets a legend in the next clip.
Ooh. A minute before I go out, Arsenio's the host. Here comes Dick Clark, who, wow, it's Dick Clark.
Oh, this is great.
You know, you grow up watching this man. And he comes over just to hear him call me Dice was hilarious. And he goes, look, Dice, if you got to stretch, Arsenio will come over to you and you'll play around. And I go, whoa, wait a minute. What do you mean stretch? Stretch what? You know, what am I stretching? My dick?
Stretch my balls.
I'm not even kidding.
I stepped on it, but it's basically the same joke. Oh, we're losing Joe. Okay, well, that's our show. No, I'm just kidding.
It was great, guys. Thanks for having me back.
It is funny though. It's like I like this story a lot that he gets into with Dick Clark because it is like this weird changing of the guard in culture, not necessarily between Dick Clark and Dice, but like this old way of doing television that was very straight laced. And like I just played on Why You Laughing, we just did Richard Pryor, and I played a clip of Milton Berle kind of chastising, like telling him, pick your spots, baby. And Richard Pryor goes, all right, sweetheart, like kind of mocking him. And it's this shift in tone of culture where like you see the 90s completely come in with, you know, Stern and like Girls Gone Wild and all this crazy shit that never would have been advertised on television years ago. And like Dice was a massive part in changing that, and as was MTV, by the way. So like it kind of all came together in this moment.
Yeah. I looked at this clip and I was just like, have you ever not known you were insulting someone as you like Dick Clark is not trying to insult him in any way, but he's just like, you don't know who, once again, I brought it up, like Dice is like almost 15 to 20 year comedy veteran and Dick Clark's going to come in and tell him what to do here. You know, it's just like, this is not going well.
I don't understand Dick Clark's involvement, but what
he's producing the DMA.
That's what I was going to say. What I'm gathering is that Dick Clark knows what it's like to put on a live event and all the things that could potentially go wrong, and he's trying to give Dice a heads up that Cher is a pain in the ass and might not be there when he introduces her, and just giving a heads up to that. And he's like, well, I mean, I guess I'll just do the nursery rhymes then. I have no choice but to do this.
It's weird to me, and this isn't just specific to comedy, but I think in comedy it stands out the most because the personalities are prone to just talking shit, like being honest about it afterwards. So you hear a lot more stories about it. But it's weird to me that the business side of entertainment has never in, 60 years, they've never once thought, well, how do we cater to, say, stand-ups or musicians or actors? Or it's just like, this is how it's done in TV. And then there's ultimately always a problem, and they're always mystified by it. It's like, well, why wasn't having Dice on live television a good idea? And then they make the same mistake the next time it comes up.
That's interesting that you say that, Mike, because it feels like take the Rat Pack, and they had like Joey Bishop, right? Yeah. Joey Bishop would have been the guy that stretches. Right. Frank's not ready. Just send Joey out there or send Sammy out there. Like you guys are the ones that are going to like have to do all the work behind this. Right. And this is, you're flipping it, right? Like Dice is Sinatra, or Dice is the main reason to be here. And Dick Clark doesn't realize that, or Dick Clark is still set in that, oh, you're the warm-up guy. Basically, you're the presenter, and Dice is like, no, you're getting 3 minutes of the main event.
Yeah. It's like now and still to this day, 30 years after, or more than that, 35 years after this, they would still make the same mistake of on some live event, they'll be like, hey, Tim Dillon's hot right now. Let's bring him out here. And then they're like, what? He made a New Orleans joke? Who would have thought?
Yeah, you're right. That's
but
funny.
I almost feel like this is the first time a mistake like this probably happened, especially with the size of the audience that they have. Like it seems to me like Dick Clark, his biggest concern is that Cher wouldn't be ready. He was not concerned at all for what Dice might do or say while he was out there. And it makes total sense.
This is Dick Clark is the Vinnie Paulino of this. It was just like somebody, I'm sorry, I don't remember who said it, but like we're putting on a show here and there's going to be logistical things that come up that we are going to have to either mitigate or adjust to. And you might have to be a part of that. He's just trying to think ahead. And Andy said that.
Comparing the MTV Video Music Awards to DabbleCon and Dick Clark to nobody, Vinnie Paulino.
You didn't watch Vinnie Paulino's New Year's Rockin' Eve a couple weeks ago?
If you were at the end of DabbleCon 2 live, then you know what I mean. But anyway, but Andy, you kind of said this. Dick Clark is just trying to think ahead and talking about options, right? And this is very much a parent-child dynamic, and Dice is the child here. Okay. And that's clip 7.
This is a standalone spot, and he goes, well, this is the way things go. I go, don't fucking tell me how things go. Okay. You're not my boss, and as I'm getting angry at him, which in my mind, I'm going, are you really getting angry at Dick Clark? Right? They start introducing me.
Fucking Rogan.
Now I'm angry. Now everybody will be disciplined.
What? Wait, what?
Joe, will you please stop doing the dice laugh? You sound like a fangirl. Please. So yeah, now so to your point, Doug, you pointed it out that the rap or whatever sounds like the written part. Like this is what was going to happen. Okay. Now we see Dice has lost his cool a minute before he's going on stage.
Yeah.
So
this is how I stretch, Dick Clark. That's what we're about to.
This is just like two people who do not know how to communicate with one another. Probably a lot of it has to do with the age gap. Like, I don't know, isn't there a page or somebody that you could send down to Dice who has maybe seen his act and could talk to him like a normal human?
Yeah, this is like all risered and stretch.
Right.
Well, give Arsenio this information to pass on. This is like Elvis meeting Richard Nixon, and they have like no idea how to relate to each other.
I think again, the inherent problem though with something like the VMAs is the industry side probably would want Paul Reiser back on that stage. The audience would want Dice. Like they can never decide what they are. Do we appease the audience or do we appease the advertisers? And that's, still obviously a struggle to this day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and once again, let's not forget this is live. This is a live. That's why Dick Clark is kind of like pivotal. New Year's Rocking Eve or something. Dick Clark is a live event guy at this point. That and so he's coming in with what he thinks is great advice, and Dice doesn't give a shit basically. And what this is two things can be true, right? So in clip 8. For the most part, so far so good. Dice is Dice. MTV is getting the standard fare. They're getting what they expected, or are they?
Little boy Blue, he needed the money. You're a pretty good crowd. You seem to know those. So I'll give you a few new poems. Rockabye baby on the treetop. Your mother's a whore. I ain't your pop.
Probably could have got away with that.
Eat no lean. So Jack ignored the flabby tits and licked the ass so clean. Oh!
That's just on television in '89.
This is so I don't know about where you guys are, but this is like 2 channels up from Nickelodeon.
Yeah, maybe that first one he could have got away with, but that licking the asshole clean line is gonna get you banned.
I can only imagine the headaches, fatigue, and joint pain that occurred backstage when the barometric pressure shifted from every MTV executive's asshole clenching simultaneously after that joke.
Dick Clark's wig pops off his head.
Yes.
Around over his head.
But it's to ban him for that would be like banning Michael Jordan for playing basketball. Like that's you literally hired Dice to do what Dice does, and then you're like, he made a sexual reference? Never again.
Yeah. Can't believe the scorpion stung the frog.
Yeah.
Okay. I keep sending Andy clips of San Francisco's Wait Czar Virgie Tovar. I don't know if you guys are familiar with what's going on in San Francisco right now. She's about to have a massive coronary when she hears this next joke.
Oh no.
I hate these chicks you're in bed with and they start complaining. Oh, my hip hurts. That's why I like these 600-pounders, you know? I like to know I'm banging a chick, and you know a chick is good to bang when she's bigger than the bed you're on. Oh, yeah. It's unfriggin' believable. I met this chick last week, wheeled her back to my apartment, got her in bed, started brushing the hair on her back.
Yeah, pig slob. Dice is getting his dick wet.
You know what it kind of reminds me of? Like, I imagine being a Dice fan at this time was probably similar to like when Shane Gillis went back on SNL after obviously getting fired. I didn't think his opening monologue was his best stuff. Like, I think he has better material than that. But I loved the fact that he got back on that show and said gay and retarded and whatever, like all the just Shane staples that he does on NBC. It was kind of like a fuck you to all the people that like tried to take him down. And this feels similar to me in what Dice is doing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Andy and we just did what was the last one? And we did who was it? Was Shane? We talked about Shane and Louis. Oh, Andrew Schulz. We just did Andrew Schulz, Mike. And the Shane appearance on Flagrant and talking about how like tires and Bud Light commercials is not prime Shane Gillis, right? You're not getting Shane Gillis when you're watching tires or a Bud Light commercial. It's just not who that is and what they're all about. And, you know, Andrew Dice Clay acting is not who Andrew Dice Clay is, basically. But
I do like to think that Cher's backstage, like, hold on, let me see where he's going with this. Like, I'm ready to go, but I'm kind of digging this.
There's a clip of Cher. What's in the bowl, bitch?
So good setup. That's where we are now. So I don't think I mentioned. Oh, we talked about this is live, and it comes to a merciful end after this clip 10.
And then you want to talk breasts? Let me tell you something. I grabbed onto a set of tits that you don't know where the tits begin and the belly ends. I mean, it's like one big lop of shit.
Live on MTV.
Because let me just say one thing. This show is great because you people are doers. You're movers. You make things happen. And this next act coming to stage, personal friend of mine and a tremendous talent, ladies and gentlemen, the last Puritan, Cher.
So we heard him
out with her whole ass hanging out, right? Is this when she was, if I could turn back time?
Her son playing guitar. Yeah. So
dancing in front of, what was it, like the naval fleet? Was that in the video? It was pretty great.
Yeah. So okay, so now we're going to go back to Rogan. We'll finish this off with a couple Rogan's clips, you know, obviously Dice reflecting on that. So what was going on backstage, you might ask, while this was happening? Here's Rick Rubin's account that Dice was told.
Cher, and she comes out singing "If I Could Turn Back Time," which is what everybody was thinking in the room. If we could turn back time about 8 minutes. But in the meantime, while I'm doing the act, Dick Clark goes to charge me, and Arsenio jumps on his back and tackles him.
Dick Clark's trying to stop your set?
Dick Clark was going to jump. He went out of his fucking mind. His hair got messy. I'll put it to you that way.
Joe, please, with the Dice laugh. You're embarrassing yourself. I don't know why he keeps doing it. But yeah, I'm sure Arsenio jumped on Dick Clark's back. But so according to Rick Rubin, that's what's happened.
Right. Yeah, 100% accurate account of what was going on.
Okay, so
Arsenio murdered an elderly man.
Dick Clark's bones would collapse if Arsenio jumped on his back.
Maybe that's why Dick Clark's last few years were not great. Maybe that contributed to it.
Yeah. Okay, so Dice gets a call from his manager, and the world is reacting to the appearance now in clip 12.
Sandy Gowan calls me at home. He goes, I was
his manager
that what I was watching on TV was only coming through my television. Then I get a call, you know, from a club owner. Remember Rascals in West Orange? Sure. The owner, Mark Magnuson, greatest guy. But he goes, so Kennison's watching this, going, that's it. He's done. He's finished. In the meantime, the reality was I went from doing one arena show, let's say at the Spectrum in Philly, to 2 arena shows.
Right.
And that's what I was
Oh.
saying. Everybody knows who this is now. He is a household name at this point. Whether like him or not, everybody knows who Andrew Dice Clay is based on this. And
Sure.
Mhm.
I think it's in your next clip, right? Where Dick Clark, as pissed as he was in the moment, at least as an entertainer, recognized
I got the next
relevance of that. Yeah.
Yeah, let's
at the
Go ahead.
time, like I don't know, boy, I'm not trying to date myself and I can't do math, but let's say I'm in, middle school or something at the time. I had no idea who Andrew Dice Clay was before this. No clue.
Mhm.
I'm not running in those circles. My dad's weirdo friends aren't like putting his albums on or something. I'm too
Yeah.
young, but immediately after this, everyone knew who this guy was.
It's
To
funny.
that point, though, can I
Go
just
ahead,
say how ballsy it is to put out immediately after this an album of him bombing to 15 people on Christmas Eve? That's
Yeah.
insane to do with the
Yeah,
day
That's
after.
insane. And
Yeah.
Mike, I don't know if we're going to talk about that album, but boy, I want to go back. I got to listen to your episode or episodes on it,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, I had a friend in college who was obsessed with that album. And I
Yeah.
remember listening to it going, what the fuck? What is wrong with you? Like, why are you
Yeah.
listening to this nonsense? That's an insane album.
It's oddly
Yeah.
genius. Yeah.
I'll plug it in that. Go ahead,
I
Mike.
was just going to say, definitely go listen to the Blind Mike Project. Or was it Why Are You Laughing?
Why You
Why
Laughing?
Are
The first ever episode of Why You Laughing was the day the laughter died.
There
Right.
you go. Check it.
And I will plug that and say go. So Doug asked, "Are we going to talk about it?" No, we're not. And I will say, go listen to Why Are You Laughing, because it is a great just breakdown of it. Like, because once again, it's like intentionally bombing. So who wants to really sit through the entire fucking thing? Which is why Mike's Why Are You Laughing episode is a great entry point for it. So you can at least know what you're getting yourself into before you do that. I really did enjoy that. In all sincerity, I loved it. Because
don't
it just breaks
listen
it
to
down
the
for
entire. Yeah, nobody should listen to
Yeah.
the entire album, but honestly,
Yeah.
find it on YouTube and drop the needle anywhere and listen for 3 minutes. You totally get it. It's
It's
crazy.
wild. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So in the last clip with Rogan here, the fallout is not always immediate.
So the next day, there's this big meeting at MTV, but it was the presidents. They're banning me for life, which is hilarious. I'm not even a singer, and I'm like, so I'm banned. What do I give a shit? Look at the numbers,
Right.
And but Dick Clark, this is why Dick Clark became Dick Clark. And he says to a room full of executives when they're banning me for life, he goes, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And he goes, "This guy is the biggest thing in the world right now, and you're banning him for life." It was just one of the crazy moments of the backlash of my career.
So I only want to correct that slightly because contextually it sounds like this made Dick Clark's career. That's not what he made. That makes it sound like this is how Dick Clark what he means is Dick Clark because he can think with a business mind where it's just like, okay, this happened, but this guy is like the biggest thing going. We're not, what are you doing? So but he's like, that's what makes Dick Clark Dick Clark.
Right.
So did this make Dice a household name the way that Doug and I are saying we didn't even know who he was till this happened? Or does this make him radioactive to the industry?
It makes him radioactive. So the problem,
I was going to say both can be true.
It's both.
We don't. There's no clips on this, but what happens is that Ford Fairlane, I almost said Ace Ventura, Ford Fairlane is coming out, and what happens is, or what you're getting is like MTV is not going to promote that the way it should be promoted.
You're
and
exactly
then,
right.
It contributes to the failure of that movie because it doesn't get to be promoted the way it should, because these things are all happening very close together. And so that's why I'm saying the fallout doesn't always happen immediately because, I'm doing 2 arena tours. Okay, but what happens after that? And that's where we're going to go from here, basically.
I think a massive difference that Dice dealt with that comics now wouldn't is, say, whoever. I used Tim Dillon before, so let's go with that. If Tim Dillon gets banned from whatever Netflix, even like whatever outlet you want to pick, people just go support his podcast. He can promote his dates there. It's really no big deal. Back then, if TV decided we don't want Dice on anymore, that's tough to overcome. You know,
right.
Like you could still do radio, I guess, but it's a pretty big chunk of his promotional tools are gone.
Right, exactly. Now, I will say, I think sorry, Ant. Doug mentioned this. I have a core memory of sitting we lived in a split level at one point, and my dad got the pay-per-view for the Diceman Cometh or something like that, or he had the Diceman Cometh, and we were literally kicked out of the room, but I sat at the top of the stairs and listened to the entire thing. And it was the when it comes to like core memory benchmark reasons why I'm a stand-up comedy fan, it's Bill Cosby himself. And I'll still proudly say that, even though, he's obviously a controversial figure.
You'll
Bill Cosby himself. I say it all the time. I say it in church to the nuns. And so Bill Cosby himself and the Diceman Cometh are enormous reasons why I'm a stand-up comedy fan. But from here, Andy, we can talk about Ace Ventura or Ace Ventura. Why do I keep saying it's Ford Fairlane? Why do I keep?
We can talk about Ace Ventura if you want.
Yeah, fine. You want to talk about Ace Ventura? We'll talk
about Ace Ventura. The next episode, next time you guys come on, we're going to do Ace Ventura.
Different episode. But
Ford Fairlane.
You're right when you're saying that this made him a household name and radioactive, because the movie goes on to get buried by executives. They moved the time slot of when it was going to be released to something that was favorable, and where people would say maybe if everything went the way it was supposed to go on MTV, they would have started promoting the movie, and you'd be watching and going, oh, that's that guy I just saw on MTV. Here's a movie of that character, a big budget, version of Fletch or Cuffs, like we had been comparing it to. And in clip 1, this is just some clips from Ford Fairlane where they're spotlighting this character as being larger than life, the way it's supposed to be. But this was a huge flop for anybody that wasn't just sold on Dice immediately. What, Joe?
Like Rotten Tomatoes style, critically panned, but on Rotten Tomatoes, it's like 25% critical failure from critics and 67% fresh from an audience.
Right. Because I've seen this movie so many times, and it's basically a white exploitation movie is the way I would describe it. He enters the movie as Dolomite.
An Italian exploitation movie.
Yeah, clip 1. This is Enter the Diceman.
Combustionable.
I'm so terrifical, I even had my own toll-free number. 1-800. Unbelievable.
It's just him making a grand entrance into, the cinema world.
So I'll admit, the way he pops the lighter open, I don't know. If you grab a Zippo lighter and squeeze it, right, it like kind of like twists in your fingers and it pops open, and then you can just like thumb it and light it. I learned how to do that because I saw it in this movie.
Yeah. There's a lot of touchstone things, but I just want to skip around, like you're saying, things that are informative to me from this movie is in clip 5. Again, you get a line that just never leaves my vocabulary.
Andy, I'm sorry. Just only for Mike and for the people who are listening to this. What we just saw there is like the hero entrance, all in shadow, backlit. He's backlit. You can't see his face. It's all silhouetted, and he's wearing like shoulder holster. And he pulls the jacket open and reaches in and grabs a cigarette, and then he pulls the other side and pulls the lighter out and flicks the lighter and lights it, and that's like the hero entrance.
Yeah. Beautiful. And he does have the airbrushed leather jacket. That's the antithesis of the brain smasher baseball jacket from the Patreon.
Right. Yeah.
And in clip 5, Ed, let's jump to clip 5. Oh, thank you. I see you have it queued up. So this is the scene where, because he is a rock and roll detective and all his clients are musicians, there's a bit where he doesn't get paid in money, and in excess pay him with a koala, and there's a gag about the kind of things that he's collecting as payment.
I've got the in excess payment. Oop, there you go. Good day. They say it's worth $3,000.
Fucking Australians. I hate that country, that continent, whatever the hell it is. Don't we do nuclear testing there? Is that some kind of giant mouse?
Down. Milli Vanilli paid us off in bicycle shorts and hair extensions. Very scary.
Rock stars. Going out of my mind dealing with rock stars. I don't make money, I make gifts. I mean, how am I supposed to pay taxes with bathtub compact disc players and autographed drumsticks? You know what I'm saying? I need cash, moolah, wampum, dead presidents, Michael Jackson, Gerald Ford.
I think it's all coming together for me now. You need money.
Come on, Jazz. I got my bulls in a bunch. Your karate class costs money. Cavities cost money. Prophylactics cost money.
I only had to play that because whenever the subject of condoms comes up, I have to try and work in prophylactics to this day. That's the way I pronounce it because of this movie.
Can we just talk about real quick the rock and roll, the cameos or the stars of the movie, the people who were in it?
Yeah.
You talked about it.
Can I say real quick? So I'm coming at this from a completely different standpoint than the two of you. Blind Mike, I don't know your history with Ford Fairlane, but as I said earlier, I've seen Brain Smasher more times than I care to admit. I had never seen this movie before.
It's fucking insane.
I know. Yeah, it is kind of crazy. I've never seen it. I love this cast. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. I mean, I think Dice is doing fine. Dice is playing Dice. I think the reason why this movie works is everyone around him has bought into it. Every performance is fantastic. They're playing off of each other really well. Ed O'Neill is the star of this movie. Like
booty time.
When his name came up, I was like, whoa, I had no idea he was in here. Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger as the bad guy was a pure delight every time he was on screen.
Wayne Newton.
I thought this was great. Was not expecting. Priscilla Presley was way funnier than she may have even been in The Naked Gun. Really, really great. The cast is fantastic.
This is the only movie that was a non-Naked Gun movie that Priscilla Presley's ever been in.
Are you serious? Oh my God.
Wow. It can't go unmentioned in clip 6. This is the other. It was just such a delight to rewatch this and see good old Gilbert Gottfried back on the screen.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, it's Johnny Crunch here, and as always, if we call you and you answer the phone by saying, hit pay dirt with Tay Dirt, you could win a cool million. At Tay Dirt, we play the kind of music that your mother hates, and I know that because right now she's naked under the desk swallowing my microphone. She likes that. Oops, I broke it accidentally. But seriously, I make jokes about your mothers, but I know that they're just pathetic sluts who have no lives and have sex with midgets.
Johnny Teitelbaum.
God, he's so young.
Yeah, so you always were, huh?
Yeah.
Suzuki Samurai, you Bensonhurst piece of shit. Here we are, still in Los Angeles. 2 rock and roll dicks. Only you're the detective and I'm just a regular dick.
So great.
So good.
Incredible.
So
Now
good.
this that part was written for Howard Stern, but Stern auditioned and they decided that he couldn't pull it off.
Really?
Yeah. So they got Gilbert to take the part.
That's
and,
hilarious.
yeah.
Wow.
And he kills it. It's only a bit part, really, but
I can't imagine Stern doing that after watching Gilbert do it.
Right, exactly.
No, he steals it.
Yeah, he steals every scene he's in. He's giving it his all. Even David Patrick Kelly, the guy from Twin Peaks and the one Arnold drops off the cliff in Commando, he plays a crazy guy. He is doing amazing work. Everyone, nobody's
like a henchman in this, right?
Yeah, nobody's winking at the camera, and everybody seems to be having a great time. Maybe it was because when they were making it, they thought it would be a huge hit or something like that. I don't know how much that is in their heads during this, but I was really impressed by how professional this movie seemed and how well it hit. Just seeing it now for the first time.
The other.
Go ahead, Mike.
Sorry. If you look at 90s comedies, most of them, like the ones that hit, it is not crazy to think that Dice could have been a movie star at that time. You know what I mean? Like there are a lot of roles. Like he was supposed to be cast in My Cousin Vinny. That's not a stretch that Dice would have been good in that movie. Like if you look at a lot of those movies, if Dice had better roles, I think he could have really thrived as a star in comedies at that time.
Yeah,
if this movie had come out on the release date that it was planned for and marketed by the industry the way it was supposed to properly be done, I think that all of that could have happened. But because he was radioactive from the MTV ban, they hamstrung his movie career.
It was such a misstep. Such a misstep for him to not recognize the MTV connection with when he's like the rock and roll detective and like to fuck with MTV in this way is such a misstep. But I only wanted to bring up the other, if you don't know or haven't heard the rock and roll detective part, the other people that are in this are Morris Day, Tone Loc, Sheila E., and Vince Neil, along with like other like Wayne Newton, and then but Ed O'Neill is just such a. He's the other one that like steals scenes that he's in. He's just so good. With the
7, Ed.
Yeah.
Clip 7.
Oh, if I could just jump in real quick, it makes me wonder, speaking of Brain Smasher, like it makes me wonder if this was really in his head during that. Like he knew that this was such a huge step down from the star power in this film. Like he has no energy in that movie at all. And it's such a dramatic difference between these two characters, even though I think they're kind of supposed to be the same character. Like I think he's supposed to play Brain Smasher the way he's playing Ford Fairlane.
Yeah.
Let's hear see clip 7 here. Ed O'Neill enters.
How'd Mr. Rock and Roll Detective boogie his way in here? Anybody?
He discovered the body, sir. Lieutenant Amos, sir.
Oh, Fairlane, please confess. I'll do the execution myself.
Nice tie, Lieutenant Anus, sir.
Are you calling me an asshole?
I'm calling you an anus, but if you prefer.
You think you're so hot because you get in all the clubs, huh? Just because you have sex with great-looking women. You think you're so hot just because you broke the Ensenada tape piracy ring.
You gotta admit, those are all pretty good reasons.
Get the fuck out of here, jerk off.
Jerk off? You're a jerk off. That's what I think of you.
No, that's what I call you because you are a jerk off.
Jerk off.
Get the fuck out of here. I did it.
I just love those two bouncing off each other like that. It's so good. I guess that jerk off line was inspired by De Niro in Mean Streets, from what I've read. But there is a whole thing, the booty time. I don't know. I think all these clips are going to get struck by YouTube anyway, so I don't want to play too much from the movie. And there's
YouTube's going to strike booty time?
Do we want to see booty time? Should I play it?
I would watch it on a loop for a day straight.
All right, let's see it.
Are you dealing in beads or what? I mean, that group Blue Dog, you know what I'm saying? Hey, Anus, they had that single, that real shitty single they wanted me to push during my publicist days.
Booty time.
Yeah, Booty Time with that lead singer, the white Van McCoy lookalike with the 6-inch platform shoes. You know he looked
Like me.
yeah. I was gonna say it looked like shit, but he looked like you.
Booty time, across the USA. Booty time, hey, hey, hey. Booty time, across the USA. It's booty time, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Unbelievable. I didn't think anything could cheer me up tonight, Lieutenant, but that brilliant performance. Jerk off. Booty time. Boot my bowl.
So, just amazing. Then there's a whole other. I'm not going to play it. It goes on way. I couldn't figure out a good way to cut it. They have a sequence where Dice actually does a musical number, Mike.
Oh, Jesus.
And basically,
Oh God, that might be the worst part of the movie.
Yeah, it is the kind of the cringiest part.
If Ford Fairlane thought that music stopped with Brian Setzer, it's like that kind of rockabilly, like horn section rock and roll, and it's pretty fucking. It might be the low point of the movie.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be weird seeing Dice and Al Bundy perform music at that time.
The only other thing, just for my own personal nostalgia, halfway through them, like literally 50 minutes in an hour, 40-minute movie, they introduce a new character. They find this who he's been looking for the whole time, Zuzu Pedals, who is this airhead ditz that is perfect for like it's just a perfect punching bag for Dice to call her stupid like 72 times in the whole back nine of the movie. And she's a real like goofball character, and they escape from Wayne Newton, who turns out to be the bad guy, and they escape by scaling down the Capitol Records building.
And Andy, I thought you were going to say that well into this movie, a new character is introduced. I was very excited. Kari Wurr is in this movie as the sorority girl.
Sorority girl, yeah.
Like, I mean, talk about childhood crushes from what was that? Remote Control.
Remote Control, yeah.
It was so great to see her. I think this was the first thing she's done. It's okay, but I am glad you brought up Zuzu because I thought she was great. I thought the two of them played off of each other so well in this movie. Like just the back and forth, every dumb joke is hitting. She's leaning into how stupid her character is. This was really great. I can't believe it took me this long to watch this movie.
Only thing that's a miss is the kid angle. Like he has this kid that idolizes him and hires him. It's so pointless. That was the only thing that sucks about it.
It's so pointless. But when the kid goes, he has a ring like mine, and it's a Flintstones ring. I kind of laughed at that. Like that's the one clue he has to go on is a chintzy Flintstones ring that the villain does wear, which I also found kind of funny.
You brought it up, Freddy Krueger being kind of like the bad guy, like the big bad, or I mean, Wayne Newton is like the mastermind, but Robert Englund is the henchman or whatever that he's after.
And also he's dressed in like a half gimp outfit through the whole thing, which is kind of cool too.
Yeah, he looks like Rob Halford from Judas Priest most of the movie. But phenomenal. If you haven't seen it, like, a great movie. So this is the pinnacle. Andy, you're done with this?
Yeah, let's move on.
So the pinnacle, and then so where we go, because this is all apologies, we had to. So we went looking for Dice apologies. It was like unapologetic guy, and he put out in '93 No Apologies, based on this, basically a fall from grace. And it's like, well, I'm not going anywhere, right? Like I'm not going to stop doing tours and things like that. So then that's really where you have to go to our Patreon to watch the Brain Smasher, because this is very much what you'll notice is like it's funny, the style and everything, these things tie together. The Diceman Cometh and everything that we've seen here, his kind of like Elvis rockabilly style carried from that special into Ford Fairlane, where No Apologies, the whole gym style thing is where he took this and then brought that right into Brain Smasher. So it was almost like this marketing synergy of look into either a special and then into a movie. And so the first thing that we have to kind of look at is he mentioned in the Joe Rogan interview that he was doing like 2 arena tours, right? So flash forward 4 years, Ford Fairlane's a critical failure. Even if the audiences liked it, the industry seems exhausted with Dice's bit and arena tours are over, but he's still doing large venues like this in clip 14, Ed. So this is just like a dome on Long Island or something. I don't like it. It's a big venue. I mean,
where they do car shows.
Westbury Music Fair is what it's called.
Oh, okay.
Are you familiar?
I know it. I know a lot of comics still play there, I think so.
Okay. So it's really round. It's like you're in the middle, right? It's like a dome and it's round and the stage is like a circle in the middle. And so they're panning across the crowd and it's just like, this guy's everyone's got gold chains on. This guy's shirts. This guy's not wearing a shirt, a bunch of whores like front and center and everything. But it's far from Madison Square Garden. Okay. So Dice tonight, Blue Ribbon livestock competition tomorrow is what this feels like. And so it's just kind of just a visual representation of the fall from grace here. So in the next clip, just by looking at this, you can see like that Dice is now fighting with the industry basically on the cutoff sweatshirt for the gym and all of that. He's very much in a fighting thing. Obviously, he's wearing a boxing robe here as he comes out.
He's wearing like he's wearing slacks and dress shoes and then a cutoff sweatshirt top with a headband and fingerless gloves.
That's a real choice. Yeah.
The only thing that's missing here when he comes out is like 2 middle fingers in the air. And when you're going to war, you want a good soundtrack. And Dice chooses the Black Crows, like 15. So he's circling the ring. It says a 1-800-HEY-DICE on the like from a top-down view, so you could like call a Dice hotline, which is like a thing in the 90s or whatever.
I hope it's him just telling jokes on the line. That would be great.
Yeah, that would be actually, yeah.
Joke hunt.
This is
and
just
he pulls the cigarette out off the stool, lighting.
This
the
is just his Brain Smasher getup. It's this
it's
same outfit that he wore in the movie. Wow.
They let him keep his wardrobe after they shot.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's reminiscent of Dane Cook's Vicious Circle. He's like in the round and he can turn and face everybody at one point. So not influential in any way.
Well, so like Steve Martin was doing arenas. I think like Eddie Murphy did a little bit, but then like Dice was essentially like the arena act until Dane Cook. Like no one really did it between Dice and Dane Cook. So there's definitely a lot of influence.
Yeah. And I'd say like even there's certain Gilbert had a lot of jokes, like you hear them in the real world and then you see their act and you're like, oh, that's where that came from or something. And I watched this and he did like 2 jokes that I was just like, oh, that's from this special. I mean, whatever, it's Dice, it's just like, oh, she's so hot, I'll eat all the corn out of her shit. Or she's so hot, I eat a yard of shit just to get to her asshole. And I remember somebody telling me that joke way back when, and I watched it, leading up to this. And I'm like, oh, that's where this is from. It's just like, it's just like, oh, but those things that are just like the jokes that creep into the zeitgeist or like become things that you hear.
Street jokes, basically.
Yeah, street jokes. Exactly. I can't remember the Gilbert one. There's one Gilbert one where I'm just like, holy shit, that's an old joke, and that's his.
The original.
Yeah.
I do like to think that for a while you thought, your friend Billy in grade school made up the eating shit joke. You're like, wait, he stole that.
I didn't think he made that up, but and so here's the opener. And it's same old dice, basically. Clip 16.
No, I'm a little tired. For the show, I was getting my dick sucked. And I met this girl in front of the toilet.
There it is.
And you think fame is great. Sucks. They don't want me for me. This girl keeps going.
How are my friends ever gonna believe that I really met you?
Oh, here's your fucking receipt.
The turlet thing, it was so funny. I have it in my notes. The voice is on it. The girl voice is yeah, exactly. That's why I come to see Dice, is that voice.
Yeah.
But I have here written, but more subtly, I really enjoy the use of the pronunciation of turlet, and the fact that that was in Brain Smasher is fucking hilarious to me. It's like, it stood out to me. But I mean, maybe just from a comedic standpoint, like the either a turn of phrase, or it just speaks to maybe his genius in writing. Even, obviously it seems like crass or whatever, but for that to stand out to me here and then have you highlight it in Brain Smasher, I don't know if it's just twin brain or just good writing, but I found that very funny.
Let's take it to the guest, Joe. Blind Mike, turlet, genius or hack?
Well, it's you know what is like interesting to me about Dice is like the more I do the douchey thing that I do of breaking down comedy on my show, like the more I notice that a big problem in comedy is guys that come up with a formula and stick to it. I noticed it even in Anthony Jeselnik's most recent special, which was very funny, but there's an element of like, okay, I know it. Here comes, he's going to be a pedophile at the end of this. Like you know what to expect, and that takes away from it a little bit. I think Dice somehow transcended that. Maybe obviously not, because his career dipped in the 90s, but at least to me, looking back on Dice, I feel like he transcended that a bit, because I just want more of that guy. Like I can listen to just him talk all day, kind of know where he's going with things, but I just find him funny.
Yeah. I noticed it with him, and I obviously, this is high praise, I would say, for both of them. I noticed it with him, and I noticed it with Louis C.K., and I think it's because of clip pulling and stuff. But what stood out to me, and this only makes perfect sense. I don't know why. It's like finding out that these guys speak in 30-second intervals. It's the way to put together a minute very easily, that just in their head, they know what 30 seconds is. They have a cadence, and if you know how long 30 seconds is, then you can make that into a minute, make it into 5 minutes, make it into an hour, and things like that. And because we're pulling clips, I noticed that Louis C.K. speaks in 30-second increments, and so does Dice. They speak in 30 seconds. And that's
who else does? Trump.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Everything he says is a 30-second soundbite. It's all
interesting.
Yeah.
It's just, if you want some type of soft skill, learn how to speak in 30 seconds. Frame your thoughts into 30 seconds, and you'll
take your own fucking advice.
Yeah, I don't do it, obviously. But all right, so into our next clip here, I had to leave this in because it sets up the finale. These folks may be plants, actually. I think Dice has done a decent amount of crowd work throughout this episode, through the special, and he continues it here with the crowd work.
What's your name, sir?
Phil.
Phil. You bang a Phil. And what's your name?
They can go away.
Make them go away. She wasn't screaming that 15 hours ago. When my poor Phil and make them go away. That's an interesting thing. Look at the way her tits jiggle when she laughs. She's so cute.
Yeah. So Phil looks like Ned Flanders, and I feel like her response is just a setup for the closer here coming up. But
I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe she's a big fan. She's sitting right up front.
Yeah. That's why people are terrified of stand-up comedians and sitting in the front row.
Yeah.
Because of that type of interaction.
Well, they definitely had one woman. I mean, go watch the special if you want. Well, one girl pulls her tits out at one point. Also, why?
Oh, I will.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you have the timestamp on that? Or
halfway through. It's literally halfway through. That's why Brain Smasher and Ford Fairlane are so egregious, because even in a comedy special here like this, some girl pulls her tits out. But there's all like the whatever, somebody produced this, puts everybody right in front who they know are good targets and shit. So okay, for the closer, I think Dice truly reveals how angry and irritated he is with the industry, especially the music industry, and MTV at the end here. He looks pissed off. He's doing a Scarface impression.
I talk about fucking them in the ass, fucking them in the cunt, but it's okay when Sharon Stone flashes a pussy in a fucking movie. That's okay, right? And Madonna. Oh, I love Madonna. Madonna blows a bottle in a fucking movie, sticks a knife up a twat in a book, and plays with a pussy on stage in front of 10-year-old kids. But that's okay, because there's a drum beat behind it. But I'm the bad guy. Well, fuck you and fuck them. So say goodnight to the bad fucking guy.
This is like the equivalent of a mic drop back then. He like
more of
just
a rally than a comedy show.
Then a bunch of ginzos wearing gold chains and their shirts fully open start fist pumping and hip thrusting, and I'm not even kidding.
So wait, when was this? What year was this?
93. 93.
Okay. I mean,
right.
It's all performative, but there's some truth behind it, and he has every right to be pissed. Like the examples he gave, and I remember right around this same time, like they started cursing on NYPD Blue, and it was such a big deal. It was like, okay, now you can curse after like 10 p.m. on just regular TV. So I get it. He's weirdly a pioneer, and he has every right to be pissed to a certain extent.
Pioneer, even in this way, where people have been parroting this sentiment for the last 32 years, where like still today, you'll hear people use the examples of movie. I've heard like Jim Norton, who's obviously heavily influenced by Dice. He does that a lot, where it's like, why is it okay for movies to show a rape or this or that? But like if you talk about it on stage, for some reason, that's going over the line. So, and it's still like, even though we say we're swinging back the other way now, in a year or 6 months or 5 years or whatever it's going to be, there's going to be another issue where a comedian says something and loses their career over it. And we've never been able to figure that out for some reason.
Did you see he just left Sirius?
Norton? Yeah. I mean, it's about time, honestly.
Yeah. But so in I was watching this and there's like 15 minutes left in it or something, and I'm like, what the fuck? Why is there so much time left? And his dad brings out the classic Diceman Cometh jacket and puts it on him, and then they do the nursery rhymes at the end. He delivers what everybody came to see, basically, and they all he brings up Stern, like he was like still relevant on Stern, and everybody was like chanting, they knew all the punchlines and everything. So he's still Dice doing the Dice thing, just not in an arena anymore. And but still fucking legend, man. He's a goddamn legend for sure.
Right. Yep. Well, that will lead us to the end of the show, where we decide whether we accept or reject. It's not even really an apology, but it's the segment of the show. He's not really apologizing for anything, right? Completely unapologetic. Do you think he regrets anything or has anything to apologize for?
I think if you played Sinatra's My Way and he said regrets, I've had a few. I think the Rogan interview reveals, that desire to have Eddie Murphy's career. So, but he did it his way. You know, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think he's probably actually in a
If he
great
didn't-
position.
He didn't scream lick her asshole clean on live MTV. Do you think his career would have went a different, more successful way?
Yeah.
Mike.
Yeah, I think that's funny because as you were saying that, I was thinking, I think maybe the one regret he has is doing the MTV set basically the same, but just in a way that's not going to get him banned for life and gonna, like his movie's going to be played and everything. And it's interesting because when you were talking about it before, the first thing that came to my mind was Artie Lang was banned from ESPN for that. Like, he basically said he wanted to fuck. I think it was
Joe
Kerry
Buck.
Champion.
Joe
No,
Buck.
Joe Buck was a different thing.
Oh,
the Joe Buck show was on HBO, but a few years after that, he was on ESPN making like very sexual references to one of the Sports Center anchors, and he got banned from ESPN. And Artie was like, "I'm not trying out for the Giants. What are you gonna? When am I ever going to be on ESPN again?" And so that was my first thought. But then when you guys pointed out that MTV, and by the way, I don't know who owned MTV at the time. I'm guessing they also owned other
Still Paramount.
Okay, so CBS probably at the time, whatever other television stations that they owned, those probably weren't running Dice ads. So like that not occurring to him at that point in his career does make sense. But knowing that, he probably would have taken, it might only be as simple as taking one line out, where the asshole licking line or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I think he could have still done that and had the integrity of being Dice. Like it wouldn't have been a sellout moment for him to not say that on MTV.
yeah.
Right.
But I respect that I do, like, as a Dice fan, I love that he did it, you know?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we don't talk about legends who didn't do shit.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I think I agree for the most part. I think his career would have been more successful had he cut that short. I think Ford Fairlane would have been way more successful, and that may have launched him. The only thing I can't get around is you could only go so far with that persona. You know what I mean? Like they can't all become Eddie Murphy and just be pretty much, I know he had his, low points too, but I just feel like he needed time away. Like he needed to go away because now he's back and he's doing stuff that's very different. And all his old fans are like, "Hey, look at this guy." And then he probably has new fans and people who are just discovering him now.
Sure.
So I think, in the long run, he's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And it would have imagine the period of Dice's career if you're comparing him to Eddie Murphy. Imagine the kids movie Dice,
right?
Yes.
The kindergarten teacher or something.
Yep.
Yeah. Or let's say he did paralleled Eddie Murphy's career. Does everybody think that Eddie Murphy's movies are killing it in 2025?
No.
It's one of the shittiest movie careers anybody's ever had.
Right.
So
yeah, that's what limiting people. Like I said, there's certain people that when they just pop up in stuff, you're like, holy shit, like it's awesome. And I think he's just like primed to, if he was just popping in here and there, or like, just the dad on a show or something, he would, it'd be great. You'd love watching him.
You know what? There's something to be said for what Doug's saying, that he's not overexposed. Now you're like, hey, it's fucking Dice. Whereas Dane Cook is a guy who I think got overexposed. Kevin Hart now is in fucking everything. Jesus. And like, it's not even Kevin Hart's fault. It's just you're sick of this fucking guy when you see him because he's in so much. Whereas Dice could have very easily been overexposed. And you're like, all right, we get it. It's the joke is your cock. We understand. Whereas him going away for a period of time, now it's like, hey, it's Dice.
Yep.
Terrific. Well, there's so much to say. We've said like not even all of it, but there's no way to say it all about Dice. So I can't thank you guys enough for coming on the show. Doug, would you please plug the plugs that you like to plug?
Yeah, Good Times, Great Movies, wherever you get podcasts. We only talk about 80s movies, so it's a pleasure to talk about anything outside of that decade. Our next episode is going to be on it's a movie that's been requested for so long. We finally got around to Strange Brew. So, that's our next episode. So,
nice, fun. I'm sure to check that out.
No, and thank you guys for having me. This has been a blast.
Yeah, Thank you.
And Mike, you got a bunch of shows that are all worth checking out. Speak to that.
blindmike.net is where you can find all the links to all my shows. Blind Mike Project is live every Sunday at 10 a.m. So you can check us out live on YouTube or get it wherever you get podcasts. Why You Laughing is also out every Wednesday night on YouTube, every Thursday on all podcast platforms. That's similar to this in that it's sort of like a history type podcast centered around comedy. Our next couple episodes coming up, we just did the life of Richard Pryor. We didn't even really get to his comedy career because he has such an amazing, crazy life. So we did the life of Richard Pryor, and then after that we have the downfall of Jimmy Kimmel, which is very heavily tied to Howard. There's a lot of Howard Stern references in there as well. So check those out.
We've featured Jimmy Kimmel on this show as well, so
I can imagine.
Fascinated to hear your take.
Yeah, look forward to hearing that.
That was a fun one to do. And also, I do Who Are These Socials with Carl?
Right. I forgot about that. How could I forget?
Every Thursday at 6 on the Who Are These Podcast YouTube channel. So check that out as well. And I have a Patreon. You can become a YouTube member or just support the show for free. I appreciate it. blindmike.net.
Yes, be sure to support Mike for free or on Patreon and support Doug. I can't thank you guys enough for being very generous with your time. We went extra long because we were just having so much fun. So please check out our Instagram, our YouTube channel, our Patreon, All Apologies Podcast at .com to find all those links. And Hackamania, check out that thumb at the top, promo code NLO. If you want 10% off to come see the WATP gang in Las Vegas. So for Blind Mike, for Nice Doug, for Fat Edsy and Joe Sixpack, I'm Trucker Andy saying,
stay sorry.